As we continue our Helene 1 year later coverage and look at recovery to renewal, I'm sitting down with first responders who played a critical role in the response to Helene and in the aftermath. I'm Jennifer Emmert, and I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. We'll start with Andrew Pressley with McDowell County Emergency Services, Alex McKnight, who is a member of the Buncombe County 911 Center, Cyndi Stewart, who does canine search and rescue, and you work with a number of counties. You're an independent contractor?
Yes, ma'am.
And then Battalion Chief John Ward with Hendersonville Fire Department. Thank you all for joining us today. Let's talk a little bit about what were some of the biggest challenges that you all faced in the first 24 to 48 hours after Helene hit the area. Who'd like to start?
I'll start. For me, it was communication. I know because I'm not part of directly in emergency services, I had no communication. I had no radios, nothing to communicate. So the first indication that I was needed was someone actually knocking on my door. So communication for us was a huge, once the cell towers went out, it was humongous for us.
Yeah, I think a lot of counties faced that. In McDowell County, how did you deal with it?
Yeah, so communications was one of our biggest challenges. Trying to get information out to the responders where they needed to respond to was definitely a challenge. Luckily, we had a few Starlinks that we were able to fall back on to help with satellite communication through our cellular devices. But our Viper network that we utilize in emergency services, it did work. However, it was taxed. But it did work some. So it was a challenge, to say the least.
Anyone else?
Yeah, it was just communications on our end. We had crews out working, and like he said, you're just unable to get a hold of them. When the cell towers went down, that was a uh-oh moment for everyone. That this is a real deal, and it's bad. So that was.
I'll echo that. Communications, in my line of work, we say, yeah, you have no comms, you have no battle. So that was really difficult for us, and also power. Some of the Black Mountain Police Department's generator went out at one point, so we had no power, and had to try to figure out how do we continue to communicate with our people in the field if you can't recharge the radios.
Was there a moment when you realized that this storm was not going to be like any other we'd experienced recently?
For us, for me anyway, it was the very first call that we ran that morning. About 4 o'clock that morning, tree down on a residence. Not uncommon during hurricanes to have trees down on residence. But we get there and left side of the street has a tree on a resident. And while we're there, the tree falls on the resident on the right side of the street. So it was, uh-oh, let's up our game. Let's get ready. It's here.
I think for McDowell County, when the National Weather Service told us this was going to be catastrophic flooding that we had never seen before, like the Great Flood of the early 1900s, I think that was the aha moment for McDowell County, where we said we need to prepare, we need to be ready, we need to start requesting resources from outside of our county, from the state level. So we stood up our Emergency Operations Center sooner than later, and it did pay off.
Buncombe County was pretty similar to that, where there was lots of buzz before the hurricane actually hit. I saw a lot of senior leaders at our Emergency Operations Center. And then for me, when I was deployed out to Black Mountain to assist, when we had to stop conducting rescues because it was unsafe to do so, that was a big aha moment to me. It's like, this is really bad.
Live and work in that area and saw firsthand.
Yeah, I live in Swannanoa, so I'm 10 minutes down the road, and I'm trying to do my job and also wonder about how's my family. If it's bad right here, 10 minutes down the road, how bad is it?
That's something all first responders had to do as you were kind of called into service, was walk away from your families. I imagine that was the difficult thing to do as well.
That was definitely a challenge for me. Day 5, I finally made it home to see my family. I've got 2 children and a wife, so day 5, going home and seeing my son and finally getting to give him a hug, it was good. It gave me another gear, so to speak, to continue
Yeah, I think for me, I lived around a first responder family. Brother's a chief officer, dad's been in the fire department, so mom works for the sheriff's office, so we all kind of knew what the scale of this magnitude this was. We had, when we could get communications, we were able to call home and just make sure everything was good. And it was, everybody's good, okay, back to work. So it was, it was for us, it was still 3-4 days before we could actually make it from work back home to check on the families and everything. And we were very fortunate where we live. We had damage, but it was minor compared to others. So
I think, this storm, everybody was impacted by the hurricane, but for every community it was a little different. Whether it was communities to the north, like Mitchell and Yancey, that needed canine services to get in and find people, or whether it was McDowell County that was facing a lot of air rescues. Talk a little bit about, the unique circumstances to your county.
Yeah, so for McDowell County, I think it was on the 28th of September, we finally got air assets available to respond to the county. We had the U.S. Coast Guard along with the North Carolina National Guard and Army to assist us with over 100 air rescues, and I believe we also done 18 pet rescues. We have a lot of areas in McDowell that's very rural, on top of mountaintops, a lot of developed areas. So we were having to do those type of helicopter rescues in those remote areas, along with swiftwater rescues. I think there were close to 100 swiftwater rescues in McDowell.
I know our canines, it was difficult getting out and about because roads were so impassable. A lot of what we had to do was on foot. We joined an equine team, we joined an equine team at one point to help trek supplies into people who were stranded. But I covered Haywood County, which was mostly, by the time they called me in, we could get to where we needed to be. It was checking debris piles. When I did Swannanoa area, that was mostly searching along the river. And then up in Burnsville, Yancey County, the Tow River, we were mainly searching around the campground where a lot of campers were swept away.
Cyndi, your work didn't end kind of in the weeks or days after.
No.
It stretched on for months.
It stretched on. We are actually still getting active calls to come out and search for remains. It's a hard thing to tell them no at this point. They're not likely to find what they're looking for, but we still get the calls.
And Hendersonville kind of became like a little urban island.
absolutely.
In the midst of all of this.
Absolutely, yeah. So the major thoroughfares through Hendersonville, 25 runs north to south, 64s run east to west. It was all the way was flooded all the way around. Yeah, we've had flooding. It's not uncommon to have urban flooding on the south end of Hendersonville, but when it was flooding on both east and west, and then Asheville Highway coming north out of Hendersonville, when it was flooded, it was a challenge. We were very fortunate that morning. Talk about outside resources a minute ago. That morning when we actually had to cease operations, we actually had a task force show up at our doorstep, but they had been cut off from the rest of their team because of the rising water. So it was Captain Bright out of Charlotte and that task force. They showed up and said, "Hey, can you get us back reunited with our crew?" And we took back roads and went alleys everywhere we could. We just couldn't get them back reunited. So luckily they were there. And they actually deployed and actually helped us. Ended up running a shuttle operation on the south end of our town, south end of Hendersonville, on the Grove Street area, so that we could get patients from the county into the city so that they could get to the hospital, and then get Hendersonville residents out to the local shelter. And I mean, it was a challenge, but we were very fortunate to have them show up when they did.
Yeah, how important of a role did some of those state and federal resources play, maybe in the immediate response and then in the days following the aftermath?
Lifesavers. I don't, speaking for just Buncombe County's role, I don't think we could have rescued as many people, and like you said, the continuing actions post the immediate event without that support. From 911 perspective, having to coordinate all the different radios, setting up Our team set up special channels, special ways to communicate, not just verbally, but like, digitally to folks conducting rescue operations. I mean, having to do that on the fly, and with having that support, even when FEMA came and helped relieve some of our staff, FEMA interp teams and peer support teams came and relieved some of our staff who have lost their homes, lost their families, or had been working straight, 2, 3, 4 days in a row without sleep. Some of us stayed at the 911 center for weeks, and just lived out of there. So when the outside support came in, it was absolutely life-saving.
Yeah, I echo what Alex has to say. From McDowell's standpoint, we had an outpouring of support from the locals, faith-based organizations, standing up our VOAD groups and helping us make sure that folks' needs are met, whether it was feeding them or making sure they had the basic necessities that they needed, and then leaning on the state to assist us with additional swiftwater teams that came in from the central and eastern part of the state. And then even at the Fed level, we had a lot of USAR task force teams that came in to help us on day's end. I think we had a total of 6 USAR teams that came in from other states. So it was an outpouring of love and support, to say the least.
And with lives at risk, let's talk a little bit about the sensitive nature of the work that you all do, and then kind of the challenges in the midst of this chaos. Were a lot of you doing kind of some different jobs that you don't typically do? Was it just pick up the hat and, kind of do what you needed to?
Absolutely. I feel like I had 7 jobs. There were parts of our leadership team that couldn't be there, so you have to step into those roles. You have to liaison with emergency services, with some of the civilian groups, VOAD, faith-based groups, very senior special agencies that come in. You have to really be flexible and really dig down deep and just know that, hey, my community needs me right now, and we all showed up as a department to help wherever we could.
Yeah, we definitely all showed up to do the job, that's for sure, and we definitely wore multiple hats. Coordinating air rescues is something that I'd never done. I've done one coordination of an air rescue, and then trying to coordinate 100 air rescues through text messages to the pilots. That's how we were communicating. I was sitting there texting back and forth with the pilots saying, this is where I think you need to go, because the information that we were getting was so scattered. We didn't know for sure if it was a confirmed rescue or not, but we couldn't leave anyone behind, and we wasn't going to.
Some of our folks had to, I think in the first few hours of Helene hitting, we received 5,000 calls, maybe 2-3 hours, and that overloads the systems, and you have abandoned calls, it never made it to us. And our system has a list of those calls, and we have people who are dedicated just to calling back every single one of them and making sure we get someone out to your location. Just because the power stops or communication stops doesn't mean we get to stop. So
I imagine the nature of what you do, Cyndi, is very sensitive.
Yes, there's a lot that I try to shield the general public from, as I'm sure these guys do as well. There's things that they just don't need to know. But we do try to be as open and honest as we can. I want to let families know what they can expect while being very discreet.
It was tough in those days because there wasn't communication. You couldn't necessarily call someone to check on them or get through, or maybe their cell phone had lost a charge because there was not power in so many communities. So I imagine you were getting a lot of requests.
A lot of requests. Like I said, a lot came from family members of family members or friends of family members who would know our services or know someone to contact that contacted me, and we would blindly go out. We would have a general location, they would give me a GPS location, and I would do my best with the resources I had on hand to go look, and most of that was on foot. We would get a few miles away, the roads would be impassable, we would have to hike in.
We have people inventing new ways to contact us when the phone lines are overwhelmed. We have people contacting us via Facebook and finding emails, so many different members of our teams who don't even answer 911 calls. We're getting emails about, hey, can you check on my sister? Can you check on my brother? Have you heard anything about that? And like you said, we can't give out sensitive information. I can't tell you, what you're trying to learn. I have to go through protocols and different things, and that was just heart-wrenching,
Yeah, it was for us, and surrounding and even in the county, just the inundation with calls, everybody calling, overwhelmed the system. And then even once they got some cell towers in, portable cell towers in, and got system comms back up and running, you still had all these calls coming through the internet, and they were dumping, and you still had, like you said, you still had to verify. So we were still sending people out, and then and that continued for a week or longer. Even when Facebook and social media got up and running, the city, we were fortunate. We had our own EOC that we had opened before the storm actually hit, and so we had all the city departments in there. So if somebody needed help getting home, we could. If somebody had a family member on it, we had somebody out, usually in the city somewhere. And we even went out into the county sometimes. Hey, so and so's got a family member over here. Can somebody check on them? They're not able to get in touch with them. Just stuff like that. It really helped. And like I said, for a couple of weeks after, stuff would come through on Facebook, social media posts, or messages to the city of Hendersonville, or the fire department, or whoever, and it would say, hey, can y'all follow up on this? And it would be we would have to go check or reach out to our neighboring agencies and have them check and confirm. And it was a steady stream.
Was it a lot of counties working together, or talk a little bit about some of the communication between even the different counties?
From an emergency management standpoint, yes, we were, as a region, we worked together. I feel, if you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but we've had teams from all over the place. If they had come out of their situation a little bit earlier, they would come over to us and, hey, how can we help? And we, I know that our emergency management team was able to put together a task force to kind of go out there and it's like, hey, you need to check on this region. We haven't got to this place yet, or this place needs water or food, or, I feel very honored to work in the field that I do with the partners that we have, because I never felt alone at all. So I'll just say thank you to you guys while you're here.
Yeah, as an independent contractor, I'll tell you, the county heads that I did work with continued to work with other county heads and say, hey, they need you here, please go here. They never shut anybody out. So I loved seeing all of you guys working together.
It's truly something special. It's a brotherhood and a sisterhood, if you will, in emergency services. We make sure that we look out for one another, to say the least, because disasters, they start locally and they end locally. And I think everyone can see that from the general public.
We're in the height of hurricane season now, as we've experienced some storms already on the coast. Some of you participate in swiftwater rescue teams. What is it like to maybe be deployed to another area?
I'm part-time on swiftwater rescue. I've been deployed twice, and it's eye-opening. You're showing up there during this jurisdiction's worst time, and you're there to do a job. And I know our team has a lot of pride in being one of the best teams out there. Numerous deployments all over the nation. And I feel like you carry that weight. You want to show up and cease the harm as quickly as possible. And to do that, you have to be ready to deploy at a moment's notice, maybe 2-hour warning for about 2 weeks. Grab your box and just go. So it's very important to me. I'm very proud to be a part of that, and I know everybody on our team is proud too.
Yeah, it's like, you know, to echo what he says, you know, you're getting deployed to these areas where you know, especially most of us know firsthand what they're dealing with. Maybe not the true details, ins and outs of it, but we have a general understanding of what we're walking into. So, you know, these guys and girls on these teams, they get antsy, you know, like he says, they take pride in being the best of the best, and people are in need, and so that, you know, you get there and it's boots on the ground and everybody's wanting to get after it and, you know, go to work, and so you try to do with that as best you can and as fastly and as efficiently as you can.
You won't stop. A lot of these guys, they won't stop unless you tell them to. They will work 24/7 and conduct rescues until, you know, their leadership has to forcibly stop them.
Well, I imagine it's hard, especially with Helene. So many areas were cut off. To not be able to access those areas or not to be able to get in there as quick as you wanted to. How difficult was that?
It's heartbreaking because you know people need you and you can't get there. It doesn't matter how hard you try, what equipment you have, there's just some places you could not get.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we had a couple teams that were just chainsaw teams. They would go out in pickups and just cut trees out of the road with chainsaws. But yeah, you just being in emergency services and being who they call when they're having their worst day, they're dying, their house is burning, whatever it is, and then having that call come in and, like she says, not being able to make it to them, it works on you.
We have some folks in 911. Our job is to get resources toward you. Our job is to get help to you. And when you have to say, I can't help you, we have some people who are still, you know, heavy in therapy because that really triggered them. Like, that's what I'm here to do, but I couldn't do it, you know, when it mattered the most.
Yeah, I echo what the guys are saying here. It was definitely heartbreaking not to be able to get to those communities because they were isolated. But it wasn't from a lack of trying, to say the least. But it was sad to see that local fire departments were trying to survive on their own until we could get additional resources to them to support their mission of making sure all of the citizens in their community were taken care of.
Right.
You mentioned mental health resources.
Sure.
I know I've talked to a number of first responders and departments that have made sure that that's accessible. How important is that in the aftermath of something like this for first responders who saw the worst of the worst?
It's extremely important. The things that first responders see on a daily basis, not just something like this, but on a daily basis, it's extremely important to have that mental health support. And then you tack on something as extreme as what happened with Helene, even the toughest of the tough are going to need some support.
Yeah, just the culture now of, you know, everyone being more open to it. Even if it's just a discussion amongst crews, or you're able, you know, people are encouraged now to be able to reach out if they need it, and that's extremely important now, more than ever.
Even prior to disasters, Buncombe County 911, I think we were the first in the nation. If not, we were one of the first. But we embedded therapists with our teams of dispatchers and call takers on the floor day to day. They're there, you know that person, you built a relationship with them, so it's easier for you to talk to them. Post Helene, that's encouraged. You know, we as leadership, we try to model that. It's like, hey, I have to go talk to someone. It's okay to do that. Please help take care of yourself. You can't take care of anybody else if you're not okay. So it's extremely, extremely important.
Yeah, it's definitely important to have, because the last thing you want to do is take it home. And you have to talk to someone, and sometimes you don't want to talk to your coworkers. So having those groups come in to talk to is huge and it's beneficial, to say the least.
Does anybody have an example of a specific rescue or situation where things went like right? The systems were in place that things really went right?
Yeah, I can give an example, but it took some time to get to them. We had a citizen that his home had crushed on him. He was trapped, from my understanding, and our teams had to hike over 6 miles overnight to get to him. I think there were a total of 11 citizens out Armstrong Creek Road is the name of the community. But they got to him and they provided ALS care, our paramedics did. They even gave him a squeaky toy, from my understanding. If he needed pain management, he would squeak the toy and they would wake up and give him medicine. And then the next day we were able to get the NC Heart team in and do a hoist and get all 11 citizens out along with the responders. So it went well. It did take time and it was very labor intensive, but my hat's off to those guys. I mean, they didn't stop. And going in and seeing the aftermath of what they went through, they're the ones that should be in this seat today telling you the story. So it was great.
No, for us, it wasn't a single event. One of the first things we did the following day was try to make contact with all of our staff. So we leaned on our partners to go out and try to make contact, make sure that they're okay, they're and their families. I think we had one manager trying to call all 86 employees on scattered phone lines, but I'm proud to say we made contact with all of them. Some of them it took a couple days. You know, I think 2 of our staff lost their houses. We could not find them, but leaning on our partners and them not giving up when they come across a road that's blocked or lines are down, or they didn't stop and they really took care of us and treated us like as its equals as first responders was incredible.
I think for me, just the first responder community for us worked extremely well. I mean, we have guys and girls, even in our organization, shift change came right in the middle of this. 8 o'clock in the morning was shift change for us. We had guys and girls on the truck that had been on the truck for 24 hours. They never questioned, never slowed down, never give a second thought to, we have work to do, let's keep going. And we had even our other neighboring agencies, they the same way, they never slowed down, they never stopped. Like you said, that mentality of let's go, there's somebody that needs us, let's go. It was remarkable to see, even when you think you're shut off and nobody's able to get to you, you still have people after the storm coming out saying, hey, what can I do? Where do you need me?
It was definitely a humbling experience, to say the least. And it truly takes partnerships to reach that goal, from the community, the volunteer firefighters, the faith-based organizations, EMS, rescue, fire, law enforcement. It literally takes a village to combat this, and we done it.
Well, what was, like, for each of you personally, what was the most difficult part of the response?
Not being able to talk to my wife and kids. That was, it's almost sad to say, but it was work. It's typical work for us. It wasn't anything like we'd ever seen before, but it was still work. But not knowing for sure what the home's like. Is the house safe? Are the kids safe? That was something that hits you, that plays into that, the psychological part of it later on in the day, that you're like, I haven't been able to hear from them. So.
I'd echo that. I had tremendous amount of guilt, trying to help coordinate swiftwater rescues, and not, my family was spread out throughout the county, and not knowing how they were, and just having to put up that wall of, I will deal with that later. I have to focus on these rescues. And then as soon as I'm relieved, I got to go find my family, make sure that they're okay. I was 10 minutes down the road, but it took me an hour to get home, and then just didn't know if they were safe at all, that was, I think for me, it's the guilt of, you have to do this job, do this, get this done, and then check on your family.
Yeah, I can echo that in a sense. I was very blessed that I had my family home with me when Helene hit. I didn't go in until the aftermath of it. And the guilt for me hit when I couldn't make to a call in time, or couldn't get to someone in time, or I couldn't even make the call because I couldn't get done with this one. That's where the guilt hit me. So yeah, the guilt definitely.
Even too when you have to, okay, it hit, we have to continue to work. I'm like, how come dad can't be home with me? You know, this is scary. I don't have any lights, there's no water, but he's going to help other people, you know. Lucky my family understands, but I still feel that way, you know.
Well, the guilt part that hit me after this, along with the, you know, the family part was, you know, there's 15, 20 other men and women that did the same thing I did, you know. They were right there. They put their family on the back burner, so to speak, and they done what they had to do to make the rescues. So the guilt comes back on me later, you know, what should we have done better? Is there anything we could have done different?
Yeah, same. For me, the hardest thing was fighting a battle on your own turf, so to speak, and then not knowing if your family's okay. But as soon as you know that your family's okay, like I said earlier, you catch another gear and you move on because you know there's people that still need you. And that's what we signed up to do, is to help our neighbor.
Do you think you've kind of processed all that we've been through in the last year or not? I know as I was preparing for this and looking through videos, even some of it hit me a little bit. Has it been a difficult thing to process, just what the community has been through?
I think we're all still processing.
Yeah, 100% still processing. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there's still things every day that I see that it just blows my mind. You know, water levels, the destruction. I mean, even back there in the spring when we had the wildfires, you know, the landslides that would in the woods in the middle, you know, just stuff like that just comes out of nowhere. It really blows your mind.
Every time we have a bad rain, I'm looking at my go bag, you know, and my kids are, do you got to go to work, you know, or should we, you know, fill up the bathtub? You know, like everybody's still processing it, and it's been, for me personally, it's been a hard 5 years, you know, from COVID to now. It just seems like it's nonstop, you know. And you mentioned mental health before, like knowing that that's it, knowing that for your staff, you know, it's like we're trying to get ready for this next hurricane season that we're in now. Like, what are we going to do? Have we made enough changes to where it would be different from how we responded the first time?
What gave you all hope or showed the community strength during the response?
Oh gosh, everybody pulling together. I have never seen communities pull together the way we have. Like, emergency services were overwhelmed, to say the least. They were overwhelmed. And the communities, neighbors helping neighbors, houses from me coming down to chop down the trees that were crossing the roads, not waiting for the fire department because they knew that the fire department was flooded with calls. So it's just the communities that came together. Just, I'm in awe over that.
Yeah, the communities, and not just local ones either. I mean, we had resources, communities, cities, towns reaching out from South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, all around. You know, when the Starlink, or before we had Starlink, when the comms went down, we had a city a couple hours away say, "Hey, we've got Starlinks at Sam's. Do y'all want them?" And I mean, you know, just like she says, the outpouring of support and love and support, it was phenomenal.
Yeah, we actually had a team from Michigan come down to help us with canines. So it was just amazing.
On the 911 side, we've had dispatchers bring mobile dispatching command units, much like this truck behind us, and set up auxiliary call taking and dispatching operations in our parking lot to help us with that call volume. From the Swiftwater side, we had teams come from all the way as far as Canada to help us. And then, but most importantly, I think the community. I love my neighbors. They show up, you know, and I just wish I could see that every single day.
Neighbors helping neighbors, to say the least. You said it earlier. That's for sure.
Are there lessons learned from the storm or something you would change going back now, knowing what we've been through?
I wish I'd gotten the training for specialized operations like this prior to, but it did inspire us to work with community members, work with other canine teams to increase our education and increase theirs as well. We're working with national agencies right now to learn more about this kind of a response.
Obviously, just be better prepared. I feel like as a whole, everybody was as pretty prepared as they were expected to be, given the previous history that they've dealt with in the past. But I will say that it seems, on our end anyway, that this has really sparked the community. You have a lot more people. The fire service in general was sort of hitting a low spot, it seemed like, as far as interest in the community, people wanting to be in the fire department and work as a firefighter, and it seems this has really seemed to spark more people wanting to help. And I can just speak on the fire department side anyway. I can't speak on everybody else's. But
I echo that. I've had so many people reach out. How do we get CPR courses? How do we get first aid courses?
Yeah.
So yeah, the community really wants to learn.
Yes.
I say the same thing. The 911 industry for a number of years have been suffering staffing issues. We haven't, unfortunately, saw like the interest jump up. Hopefully, it's just delayed. But like you said, preparing, stockpiling cots and daily necessities. Just try to be more prepared for our staff. I will say that our county leadership has to really learn from this, to where they're doing as much as changing job descriptions and letting you know, hey, everybody needs a basic level of emergency response or incident command or things like that. Not that we are going to put you in harm's way, you just need to know it, because we need to repurpose you during major events like that. So I think we're learning very much, and the community is interested in wearing more than one hat. Hey, how do we take care of us until you can get to us? So I've seen a lot of that spark. So yeah, I think we're learning from it.
Yeah, I echo what all these guys are saying and what we've already implemented in McDowell County, and we're obviously taking lessons that we learned from Helene and trying to implement it now. Is we've constructed a team to make sure that our employees are taken care of, their families are taken care of, that will go to their homes and report back and say they're okay. They have everything they need. And having that now will better prepare us moving forward to be able to serve and protect the citizens.
Are there other resources that Helene put a spotlight on that showed that the community might need?
I did not hear the tail end of that question. I'm sorry.
Are there other resources that Helene put a spotlight on that it was like, oh, we're missing that resource, we need to add that, or something more that's needed for any of the communities?
It was, for us, it was Starlink. That was the major satellite internet. I mean, we were fortunate we had that task force team show up, and they deployed there, and they had comms with Raleigh and on south of Grove Street in Hendersonville immediately. And when we got back to our city EOC, like I said, they realized that we needed that, and that was eye-opening that this works. If you got power, generator, this works.
For us, it's keeping that community connectiveness. I know on a Swananoa level, there are a bunch of organizations there where they're still trying to keep that together. Let's keep talking to each other. Let's stay in contact. They're actually following emergency management principles by, hey, let's get to know each other before the storm happens. At a bigger level, like I'm right now trying to stand up a VOAD team, a voluntary organizations active in disasters, that works with Buncombe County's long-term recovery group, to try to keep the momentum going. The farther we get away from a disaster, the less interest you see. But if you keep people talking to each other, keep training folks, and keep practicing, you just have a better response to disaster.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and making sure that citizens are prepared 72 hours before a storm, having that ready to go kit when disaster does strike. And I believe we're going to see that now. I really do. Probably more so ready than we are at times. And that's great, just seeing that community approach of everyone coming together and being prepared.
I know the response really started in the days prior to the storm, because a lot of emergency service personnel was out warning people in areas that tend to flood to maybe evacuate. Do you feel like evacuation orders maybe going forward are a little easier for the community to take after seeing what has happened with Helene?
I would hope so. I mean, you know, we had a couple instances where they went out the day before the real flooding hit and evacuated low-lying areas. And then unfortunately there was some loss of life in those areas where the people didn't evacuate later during the storm. So I think that gives us a little more credibility when we show up and knock on your door and say, hey, just so you know, there's flooding coming.
Yeah, I think people are definitely listening more now. I know in our area, I'm in Haywood County, we're prone to flooding in certain areas. The people who are used to the flooding, they know, let's get out. But the people who, it always comes to the edge of our property, but we're okay, they were the skeptical ones, and they were the ones that got trapped.
I would hope that people heed warnings, like take it more seriously, be safe than sorry. People who didn't, you know, a lot of people, we didn't have to have that many loss of life.
And of course there were things we couldn't account for, like we couldn't account for the mountains literally sliding all the way down. But the flooding, as far as that goes, that a good portion of that was avoidable for loss of life.
I think nobody was prepared for the amount of landslides that we had or the amount of water because of the weather situations. Anything you want the community to know going forward when it comes to disaster response or how first responders handle these types of things?
People need to know they really are trying, even though they can't necessarily get to your call. Like you said, the communication system was so overwhelmed that you couldn't even get some calls. They need to understand that yes, they're overwhelmed and they really are trying to help. They're just not able, they don't have the full resources to be able to do that.
Right. We prioritize incidents, so we go to the worst situation first. So, you know, if you're without power, you may think that that's the worst thing in the world, but there may be people well ahead of you in that queue that is having a much more difficult time or in a, you know, life's in jeopardy type of situation, and we have to go to the worst ones first.
Yeah, just to echo that, we're coming. Yeah. Just bear with us, you know. Like you say, your emergency, not saying it's taken away from it, but it may not be as detrimental as us getting to someone else first. So, but just be patient, especially in an instance like this. We're coming.
Yeah, other lessons that can be applied to future disasters. Let's hope we don't have a future disaster, but
I think we all learned a lot. I know my team, again, we're independent contractors, but I know my team, we learned a lot about what these guys are doing. We already worked in depth with emergency services, but there's so much behind the scenes that people don't realize. And we didn't even realize, even as close as we work with them, we had no idea what you guys go through. And it is so in depth. And so it gave me a good sense of what they're doing and how I can support them better.
For us, we're leaning on technology to try to help us step up our game, for lack of better words. We're looking into quality assurance, like AI, something like to read how we respond to every call and look for places that we can grow, so we can be the best for our community. We are right now building a newer 911 center, but the call volume that we, over the last couple of years that we take, already says that we've outgrown that before we ever moved into it. So I know for us, it's going to be over the next couple of years is like, how do we get into a bigger space so that we can add the additional skills and capabilities needed that our community needs from their 911 center.
Technology progresses,
right.
The counties need to keep up
to
be able to respond as quickly as you can.
Right. There are certain expectations that the community has that we should be able to do, and we don't have that capability right now. So we need to get there.
For us, we just work on staffing, training our staff. You know, we have several members on staff that are Swiftwater, and they have all the gear and everything, but you know, we found out quickly we didn't have enough. You know, so it's for us, it's really just working on getting our staff trained up, and getting the additional equipment and the resources, and being able to not be self-sufficient, but at least get started in the future a little better. Work towards that self-sufficiency eventually, but you know, and be able to, you know, Haywood County gets hit with a flood. Hey, we have the resources. We're right here. We'll be more than welcome to come help you.
Yeah, just make sure they're always planning on blue sky days, and make sure that we're leaning on our neighbors, and don't forget the partnerships that we've established, and keep them going so we can combat whatever may come our way.
Anything else anybody wants the community to know as we're wrapping things up here, just when it comes to first responders and heeding those warnings to evacuate? And
yeah, definitely heed the warning. We had a great response in McDowell County from the citizens, but just make sure that you heed that warning. Make sure that they're following us on our social media pages, signing up for our Nixle platforms to make sure they're getting those weather alerts so they can evacuate in a timely manner, because we truly care. We're your neighbor. We're just like you. We're human. But sometimes, you know, we have to ask you to do things you don't want to do. But we're looking out for the best interest and safety and the well-being of that citizen.
Definitely heed the warnings. Use social media, use technology that we have available to us now, and assist those that don't have access to that technology. There's a lot of the older generation that still, they're not going to be on Facebook. They're not going to play on any technological devices. So that's when they rely, like you guys have said, on their neighbors to warn them, to help them.
Yeah, agree with everything they said.
Yeah, like they say, just check on your neighbors. You know, heed the warnings. It's a stressful environment for us, so if we come across a little rash, we're not trying to be that way. You know, we've got those 10 or 12 other calls coming. So, you know, just we ask you to do things, it's for your best interest. It's probably uncomfortable, and we understand that. And we try to be as compassionate and caring as we can, but we are looking out for your best interest, whether you believe it or not.
I want to say thank you to each one of you for coming here today to participate in this. And we want to thank Buncombe County Public Safety Training Center who hosted us today. And of course, I also want to remember several first responders who lost their lives during the aftermath of Helene.